Thank you so much for joining us. I'm wondering if you have any inside information about when this election is going to be finally called.
Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to join you, Sally. It's always fantastic to talk to South African audiences during an election time. It's not yet clear when the election will be called. As you just noted in the previous take, Sally, there's going to be a recount of the votes in Georgia, but that's not really going to determine the outcome here. At some point within the next hour, ballots are going to be released in the state of Nevada. Joe Biden has a clear lead in Nevada. I'm confident that the ballots that are released will only increase his lead and make it likely that Nevada will be called soon, which will inch Joe Biden's 6 electoral votes closer to 270. And then later this afternoon, there's no doubt that Joe Biden's lead in Pennsylvania, the critical state of Pennsylvania, will be insurmountable. And at that point, determinations are going to be made. So sometime in the next few hours, Pennsylvania will determine this whole thing.
Is it basically in the bag for Joe Biden?
It is. It is. If you know your elections well in the U.S., and you know that I had the privilege of working on many elections in America and serving as the director of the Democratic National Committee and President Obama's political director. If you know your counties well in the U.S., you know mathematically it's not possible for Donald Trump to catch Joe Biden either in Pennsylvania or in Nevada. We already have Michigan and Wisconsin in Joe Biden's column. So the additional numbers in Pennsylvania will absolutely, positively cement this. You noted that President Trump made some pretty outrageous claims yesterday. He's also ordered his campaign to go into court in a number of municipalities to try to sue against the votes that are being counted. But those lawsuits are being tossed out. A judge in Pennsylvania tossed out the Republican lawsuit yesterday and basically laughed it out of court. There is no evidence of any widespread or any voter fraud whatsoever. The rules have been observed here, and we have record turnout and participation in America that ought to be applauded and celebrated, not derided as illegal by the president.
Now, you were obviously serving as ambassador to South Africa under Barack Obama. I would imagine that you know Joe Biden. Could you give us an idea of what a Joe Biden win will mean for us here in South Africa?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of knowing Joe Biden for, I guess, about 20 years now, and he actually swore me in as ambassador to South Africa. So I do have a relationship there. Joe Biden is a serious man. He's a thoughtful man. He is a profoundly empathetic man, and he is someone who understands the importance of the role that the U.S. plays in the world. In the last few years, we've seen a downgrading of multilateralism, a downgrading of partnership at a time when it's needed most. In this moment of COVID-19 and this pandemic, traditionally the President of the United States would be calling together world leaders, would be convening world health ministers from around the world, sharing intelligence, sharing resources, working towards a vaccine that could be distributed to everyone without favor. We have not had that in this instance. We've actually had somebody deriding the science. We also know that in this moment on the African continent, South Africa itself is playing a hugely important role as diplomats across the continent, working towards peace in challenging spaces, particularly in the Horn of Africa now where there are challenges. South Africa would have the partnership of President Joe Biden, his Secretary of State, and the American people in that work towards peace and in the work of trying to lift up new economic inclusion in the continent as well.
What will Joe Biden's biggest challenge be? I mean, it is massive. We are seeing infections soaring of COVID-19 in the USA, but the economy is also really battling. And he has a very polarized, divided country to bring together. I know that you've done a lot of work with the Open Society Foundation around COVID-19, trying to support countries around the world. Is COVID-19 and dealing with the impact of COVID-19 going to be the biggest, toughest challenge, or is it going to be trying to get anything done with a Senate led by the Republicans?
Sally, you ask a very sophisticated question. COVID-19 obviously is a huge and number one priority for all of us in the global community, and that's going to be the case for President-elect Joe Biden once that determination is made. So that's definitely, no doubt, a huge critical priority. But I think, Sally, it is important for Joe Biden to first express the desire to work towards unity. In the last 4 years, we've had a president on all matters, including COVID, who's made a distinction between Americans who live in Democratic strongholds versus Americans who live in Republican strongholds. And he's lifted a policy that favors those who voted for him. Joe Biden's made it very clear that on day one, he'll be a president for all the people in America, including and most especially those who did not cast their ballots for him. So he's got to work towards unity first, and then as he works towards unity at home, take on the challenge of COVID, both as a healthcare challenge and as an economic challenge. And he'll do that by lowering the drawbridge and inviting partnership with South Africa, with Brazilians, with those in Europe, those in Asia. So those are the things that he'll be working towards.
And Patrick, Gaspard, you spent time in South Africa while you were the US ambassador here. If called upon by Joe Biden, and it does look increasingly likely he will be the next president, would you return to South Africa to be ambassador again?
First, let me just say that serving in South Africa under President Obama is the greatest privilege and honor that I've ever had in my life. And secondly, if the new president presses me into service in any way, it would be difficult to say no to a new president. There's much work that needs to be done for America with humility, to reapproach its work in the world community, and South Africa will be essential to that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some time with us. That, of course, is the former US ambassador to South Africa, Patrick Gaspard, and he is now president of the Open Society Foundation.